This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gitu-Ewart. It's Tuesday, July 9th. This is Africa 54. Tuesday is the 8th anniversary of South Sudan's independence, but for millions of hungry citizens, there's not much to celebrate about. As fighting rages in Libya, desperate African migrants holed up there are determined to make the treacherous trip to Europe. And the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area is bringing hope of a more prosperous Africa, but the excitement is being tempered by some harsh realities. 8 years after South Sudan's independence, hunger continues to plague the East African country. A recent United Nations report shows nearly 50% of the population, 6.1 million people, are facing some degree of food insecurity. Sheila Pony looks at the challenges from the Upper Nile region of South Sudan.
Climate conditions, economic instability and pockets of continuing conflict has driven millions of refugees to neighboring countries, while others seek food and safety at so-called protection of civilians or POC sites inside the country. Mary La and her 12 children live among 30,000 other internally displaced persons in the Malakal POC and struggle to make their food allotment last each month.
My husband and I used to do farming and fishing. We used to make our own food, but now we are depending on humanitarian aid.
Mary's family has lived in this camp for 6 years. They told me, even after the years of civil war came to an unease end last year, they stayed because their home no longer exists. Others are even afraid to leave the security of the camp. Last year's fragile peace deal has allowed the WFP to pre-position 173,000 tons of food in 60 locations ahead of the rainy season. This is 66,000 tons more than last year and will help more than 5 million people. But for South Sudan, the ultimate goal is self-sufficiency.
The problem is not somebody coming to give us food to become independent. The problem is how we can produce food, our own food, to become independent.
As the world's youngest nation begins its 8th year of independence, everyone agrees on what the first crucial step forward must be.
If we continue with this peace for at least 2 years with stability in the country, we think we can manage to produce our own food.
The need for peace and stability is also understood in the POC sides.
There is no alternative unless we accept peace.
Sheila Pony for VOA News, Malakal, South Sudan.
We have this developing story out of Nigeria Tuesday. Security officials have closed off the National Assembly after shots and tear gas were fired during a standoff between police and Shiite Muslim protesters turned violent as the demonstrators tried to enter Parliament complex. No injuries were reported, and it isn't clear who fired the shots. Members of the Islamic movement have been holding regular protests at the Assembly to urge the release of its leader, Ibrahim Zakzaki, who has been in custody since 2015. Governments and international organizations worldwide are continuing to condemn last week's heinous bombing of a migrant detention center in Libya that killed more than 50 civilians and wounded at least 130. The horrific incident, however, is not deterring desperate migrants who still want to make the dangerous trip to Europe. VOA's Heather Murdoch reports from Tripoli.
Protesters have been outside this detention center for nearly a week because the facility they were held in was mostly destroyed in the bombing, along with dozens of lives. These signs say things like, "We only wait for death," and "No humanity." The protesters are demanding release and safe passage out of Libya. Hours after last week's bombing, one man makes a special plea before police cut off the interview.
We're not going to stay here, and we need to cross the Mediterranean Sea. It's not mean that we're going to tourism. We escape our country.
Kilometers away, but still within earshot of Libya's ongoing war, other families are not detained, but also have no place to go. Most of these families fled war and genocide in Sudan. After arriving in Libya, they were later kicked out of emergency housing. Their Tripoli homes are still in a war zone.
So the house completely is not good. There is no door, there is no window, so it's not safe to stay.
At a detention center in the suburbs, women and children languish, hoping to be freed. Some fled extreme poverty in Nigeria and are victims of human trafficking. If they don't pay traffickers tens of thousands of dollars for their passage to Europe, they believe they will be cursed, says Mercy.
Either it will die, or it will be mad, or it will be useless. It cannot even do anything. It will be crazy.
It is getting much harder to cross to Europe, she says, because seaports are being closed and the growing anti-immigration sentiment in the West. But like many migrants, Mercy says, for her, there is no going back. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Tripoli.
The cholera epidemic in Yemen is getting worse, and the United Nations says funding to help fight the disease is badly lacking. A spokesman for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says there are more than 460,000 suspected cases and 705 deaths in Yemen so far this year. Officials say flash floods, poor waste management, and a lack of clean drinking water have spread cholera. Cholera is generally contracted by drinking contaminated water. The African Continental Free Trade Area is officially underway. It was launched in Niger Sunday at the opening of the African Union Summit. The agreement forms the largest free trade area in the world. There is hope that Pan-African trade will thrive, but structural weaknesses are expected to make it a slow process. Moki Edwin Kinzeka narrates this report by Anne Nzouankeu in Niger.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari at the African Union Summit in Niger launched the African Continental Free Trade Area by signing Africa's largest economy onto the deal. After months of reluctance over competition concerns, Nigeria's support gives weight to forming the world's largest free trade zone, a 55-nation bloc worth $3.4 trillion.
So Nigeria stands to profit. Other African countries stand to profit also from Nigeria being engaged. It will not only lead to Nigeria's economy becoming bigger, but lead to those other African economies becoming stronger and much bigger. So together, the mutual benefits of trade will lead to elevating the Nigerians' African status away from the poverty of today.
Intra-African trade makes up only 17% of exports, which are hampered by poor infrastructure, taxes, bureaucracy, and corruption. The Trade Pact aims to boost cross-border trade by reducing or eliminating duties and red tape. To help lower costs, the AU launched a Pan-African payment system at the summit in Niger's capital.
African trade today is conducted on US dollars, euro, and increasingly renminbi. What this is doing is to reduce the use of third currencies in the bilateral trade settlement in Africa, because we estimate that costs Africa between $5 to $7 billion. And beyond that, it also reduces the trade, because Africa has scarcity of foreign exchange.
African exporters want the free trade area to quickly enter into force to eliminate barriers and create free movement between states.
We do not understand why, for example, a person from Niger who goes with his goods to Burkina Faso still finds constraints there. We do not understand. It's a problem between states, and we want states to review this situation.
Despite the African Free Trade Area's launch, much work remains before the agreement becomes effective. While all of the African Union's 55 members, except Eritrea, have signed on to the free trade area, only half have ratified the deal. And even after costs are reduced, Africa's exporters will still have to contend with non-tariff barriers that will take much longer to fix, such as corruption and poor transport links between nations. For Anne Zwanke in Niamey, Niger, Moki, Edwin Kinzeka for VOA News.
Let's head to Egypt now, where Africa 54 sports reporter Sandy Shomari is standing by in Cairo. Good evening, Sandy. The quarterfinals are set in the Africa Cup of Nations. What are analysts saying about the tournament so far?
Thanks, Esther. The tournament so far, Esther, has so many ups and downs and surprises. As you see, Esther, today, then off day, we're getting ready for tomorrow for the quarterfinals to start. Already you have Senegal and Benin sweating it out, as you say, tomorrow. We also have tomorrow Nigeria and South Africa going to sweat it out on the second game. But there have been so many surprises, Esther. So I spoke to one of the Africa's international best from Zambia, the international former star Kalusha Bwalia, and I wanted to know what he's thinking about the battle to come tomorrow.
If you look at yesterday's game in Ismailia again with Ghana, it was a 50-50 match. It was 50-50, you know, Tunisia, they're always there. They're always pushing, and at a particular time, you know, Ghana couldn't get going. You know, Ghana, I know in the last 10, 15 years, I think Ghana, we're always used to seeing them in the quarters, in the semis, in the final. We sort of get used to that. World Cup, they were in I think 2006, they were in 2010, they were in 2014. So you're always used to seeing Ghana going as far as they can because of the pedigree that they have, and you know the Ayo brothers and all the players, Wakasu, and all the players that Pate and all the players that they have. So you know, it's really sad because their wait they have to wait. The last time Ghana did win an Africa Cup was in 1982. So having said that, yeah, we're looking forward to the quarterfinals. Let's see what they will bring. After the quarterfinals, I think that then people will be able to see which team is in there. Maybe they have, you know, a hand on the cup, or they are there looking to go to the final. But it's too early to say.
Great catch there, Sunday, with a football icon in Africa. Now, the mood is, how is the mood in Cairo now, since we are now in the second phase of these games?
Esther, before we go to this second phase, the mood is changed here in Egypt. You know, just like the storm you were facing in Maryland the other day in D.C., now it's like the storm is calming down. People are now realizing, like, oh my goodness, Egypt is not in the tournament anymore. So now what are they doing? If you talk to most Egyptians right now, Esther, they're now supporting Algeria. And Algeria will face Ivory Coast July 11, 6 p.m. And of course, Tunisia will face the Cinderella Madagascar, 9 p.m. July 11. So right now, everybody is waiting to support a different team because the host nation is no longer in the tournament, Esther. So there's so much that we won't see, as we were saying previously, because things have changed. And the superstar of Egypt, Mo Salah, is now saying he's apologizing because of the exit so early, hoping next time around they will learn from their mistakes, Esther. That's how they do it over here.
Yeah, we all do that with Sunday. Thank you so much. It's great talking to you again, Sunday. Africa 54 sports guru Sandy Shomari reporting live from Cairo. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a U.S. charity brings a smile to Malawian children born with a deformity. We'll be back.
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
U.S. President Donald Trump touted America's clean air and water in a speech from the White House Monday. But experts and activists say Trump's policies, including pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, are undercutting America's environmental record and leadership. Here's VOA's White House correspondent, Patsy Widakuswara.
Heavy rain has caused flood emergencies throughout the Washington, D.C. area, with water pouring down the ceiling of a metro station and gushing into the press workspace in the basement of the White House on the day President Donald Trump defended his administration's record on the environment.
We have only one America. We have only one planet. That's why every day of my presidency, we will fight for a cleaner environment and a better quality of life for everyone.
The United States has regulations to safeguard the environment, including the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Trump touted that the U.S. is ranked #1 in the world for access to clean drinking water, and the country's air pollution is 6 times lower than the global average. But Trump's speech raised eyebrows, particularly as his administration seeks to ease dozens of protections for the environment and public health, including rolling back the fuel efficiency standards for automobiles and repealing the Clean Power Plan, which sets limits on greenhouse gas emissions from existing coal-fired power plants, and replacing it with the administration's Affordable Clean Energy Rule.
Both of these are likely to make our air quality here in the United States worse by particularly increasing particulate matter and increasing emissions from automobiles as they become less efficient than they would have been under the previous regulations. So while I agree that we have a world-leading framework, I feel like this administration is making things worse.
In 2017, Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, a global pact to mitigate climate change championed by the Obama administration.
Of today, the United States will cease all implementation of the non-binding Paris Accord and the draconian financial and economic burdens the agreement imposes on our country.
In his speech, Trump reiterated his rejection of the Paris Accord, calling it unfair, ineffective, and very expensive. But the idea that a nation must choose between a healthy environment and a strong economy, and Trump's claim that his administration is the first to successfully promote both, is rejected by climate experts.
Environmental improvement and economic growth have gone hand in hand for decades. And so this idea that it's completely new that we can have strong environmental growth and environmental protection, it's just crazy, and I found that a really egregious problem with the speech.
Gross added that air and water quality are issues that matter to voters as Trump seeks re-election in 2020. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
It's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with a look at sports injury. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. That's right, sports injury. As the Africa Cup of Nations heads to the quarterfinals, it is a very intense time for the players, and they must perform at their best. Athletes are always worried about being injured. Let's look at some of the more common injuries, particularly those that involve knees and ankles. At some point, most athletes will suffer from an ankle sprain. This injury occurs when the person twists or rolls an ankle. The foot usually turns too quickly to the side. This damages the ligaments and tissues that support the ankle. Inside, it is the deltoid ligament that is affected, and outside, it is the lateral ones that suffer trauma. The joint takes a serious blow which causes pain when the athlete tries to move the ankle. This is often followed by swelling. That's what happened to PSG star Neymar in March 2018 following a tackle during a game. These sprains often vary according to the type of sport and the part of the body that is most at work. Tennis players often suffer from injuries to the wrist or the shoulder. In terms of treatment, once the swelling has subsided, recovery requires a rest period and the use of physiotherapeutic support to keep the ankle motionless. The movements are done using crutches. In some severe cases, surgery is necessary. Other types of injuries experienced by athletes include knee injuries. They are among the most serious in football and also the most common. They can be caused by direct impact during a tackle or an indirect shock, such as a sudden change of direction or pace. There are several types of injuries which affect the ligaments, the meniscus, or the tendons. A torn anterior cruciate ligament is one of the most serious injuries an athlete can have. It can disable a player for 6 to 9 months, and surgery is often required. Now, when people are recovering from an illness or injury, they often don't think of nutrition. But as VOA's Carol Pearson reports, it may be the key to regaining their health.
When Monica McComb returned home from the hospital, she didn't think about nutrition as being essential for a full recovery.
I was really, really weak. You know, I could even hardly walk with the cane.
McComb didn't associate her weakness with malnutrition until she was evaluated.
Malnutrition is invisible to the eye, and therefore it remains underdiagnosed and undertreated.
McComb enrolled in a home health care program and was given a detailed nutrition plan. Most Americans have access to food, but 1 in 3 patients in home health care are malnourished or have some nutritional deficiency that puts their health and their recovery at risk.
Nutrition is not the primary reason why patients usually come to home health. However, it is important for us to pay attention to the nutrition to promote their strength and get them recovered quicker.
Researchers from Abbott and Advocate Healthcare wanted to find a way to reduce hospitalizations and promote patients' health. In a study funded by Abbott, the researchers found that when patients on home health care got education about nutrition, they were nearly 20% less likely to be hospitalized or rehospitalized in the 90 days after an injury or illness.
Through identifying the patients at malnutrition risk, feeding them with the right nutritional drinks, you are increasing their chances of recovering faster, not going back to the hospital, or not going to the hospital in the first place.
One of the study's goals was to create a program that patients could follow on their own. One reason the patients were educated about nutrition.
And their outcome is so much improved. They have more strength, they heal quicker, they have less falls, they have less readmissions.
The researchers hope other healthcare programs and hospitals can use the study to help other patients as well. McComb says she feels stronger and has more energy than she had at the start of the program. She credits support from the home health nurse and the focus on nutrition for her improved health. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
The international charity Operation Smile is helping Malawians with cleft lips and palates remove shame and embarrassment stemming from their condition. The US-based charity has so far given free surgeries to over 1,000 cleft patients in Malawi and is working on reducing a shortage of local surgeons who perform corrective surgeries. Lamek Masina reports from Zomba, Malawi.
Agnes Chiwocha recalls her sharp reaction when she gave birth last year to a child with a cleft lip.
I was devastated. I wondered why I gave birth to such a child. I asked myself, what the hell happened to him to make him look like this?
In her home village, people spread a rumor that her child's cleft lip was from a botched backstreet abortion. Others accused Chiwocha of using contraceptives that deformed her baby.
But I told them that this is not because of contraceptives. How could I take contraceptives if I had another child? I told them that this is how God created him.
The charity group Operation Smile says cleft lips and palates are the world's third most common birth defect, 1 out of 750 births. Operation Smile gives free corrective surgeries to those who have the condition. In Malawi, the group performed 1,000 operations in 7 years, but relies on foreign doctors because there are few local plastic surgeons.
Right now in the country, we have only 2 plastic surgeons that volunteer to work with us, that can do this and volunteer to work with us.
People born with a cleft may have difficulty with speech and eating. They also face cruel treatment and discrimination.
My aunt insulted me a lot. She told me right to my face that if I was born when she was there, she would have thrown me into the toilet.
But those who receive the surgery have reason and the ability to smile.
Now those who used to insult me will be very much ashamed once they see this child, because the child they used to laugh at has been operated on. They will not laugh at us again.
And the smiles are spreading.
Now I will be able to do everything without any problem. I will not be ashamed as I was before. Also, I will be free to tell others who have cleft to come in the open and have their defect repaired.
Operation Smile estimates about 3,000 Malawians still suffer from cleft lips or palates. To tackle the problem, the group is also training local doctors to perform the reconstructive surgery. Lamek Masina for VOA News, Zomba, Malawi.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Mudu. Esther?
Well, Lino, thank you so much. Now, great reporting on sports injuries. Anything we know about in the ongoing AFCON games in Egypt?
Well, so far, nothing major has been reported in terms of any athletes getting injured. So it's good news because usually during competitions such as the AFCON, the World Cup, athletes and supporters are always very concerned about the fact that their favorite player or any player, as a matter of fact, will get injured. So, so far, so good, Esther.
Thank you so much, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Mudu's health report every Tuesday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.